Since the shell shock experienced by soldiers in the First World Bankers' War, treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder has not improved much and continues to be beset by mainstream mental health service quackery. Nor is the treatment of former soldier pawns brutalized by our needless Anglo-American Zionist wars improved much at all. All of this needs to change. And there's a dawning happening in the field of trauma healing which must be allowed to progress to a bright new day, and then plenty of hay needs to be made while the sun shines. I'm always learning and always on the lookout for techniques and modalities to add to my therapeutic toolbox, and I want you to know that there are options outside of the largely dismally poor, often horribly detrimental mainstream offerings. There is definitely quackery within the alternative therapy field as well, so if you're looking for a trauma healing practitioner or therapist to help you to heal, then find and talk to a few and go with your gut feeling. You're likely to know when you've found the right person for you. Also see if you can get testimonials. And if you're already sold on a particular healing method or modality for your own healing or to train as a healing practitioner in, then get advice and do your homework before you choose a particular school or practitioner to work with, and get testimonials. I'll illustrate the importance of this with my own alternative therapy quackery story, which involves an NLP hypnosis school which I will not name, though I'm tempted to because they really need to be called out. An acquaintance of mine told me that he was learning NLP hypnotherapy, and I was happy for him. NLP and hypnosis are the mainstay of my practice and very, very powerful. He asked me if I would be a practice patient, and I was happy to oblige for a couple of reasons. First, I was really curious to know how his course was taught and what the content was like, and second, I really could have done with some hypnotherapy myself, so he would have some proper gritty battlefield experience, and I would benefit if he had any sort of aptitude and his teachers were any good. As a bit of background, in years past I would generally have had at least a couple of people in my life who do what I do, and we would have called on each other if we needed help with an emotional issue, something we were struggling with. It's kind of like falling into a hole. If the hole is not too deep, you can just climb out. But sometimes you need someone with some specialized equipment to pull you out. And that's where a talented, capable trauma healer is needed. And this is part of that need for collegial support, which I would like to cater for. Anyhow, my people I would normally call on were just no longer there for various reasons. And I'd had the most horribly traumatic year of my life since the start of my self-healing journey. So here was a perfect win-win situation. Happy days. Real life practice from my friend and some necessary healing from myself. Anyhow, he sends me a generic guided hypnosis thing that he's recorded with music, which I listen to, and I think it's quite good. And we arrange our first online video call session. On it, he begins by telling me he's going to sign me up for 8 weeks, maybe 12, and alarm bells ring a little bit. This is NLP, the most powerful modality on the planet as far as I can tell. No one should need 8 trauma healing sessions with a client. I usually need 1, sometimes 2 or 3, rarely more. Then he tells me all about stress and trauma and the amygdala and the hippocampus and how the brain works. It's a script, and I think, okay, really not necessary, but okay. And then he asks me about my presenting problem very briefly and asks me to rate my feelings about it on a subjective units of happiness scale from 0 to 10, where I would use a units of distress scale, so my 10 is his 0. I give him a number, then realize I need to reverse it to match his weird scale, and he asks me, if you wake up tomorrow and your happiness has increased by 1 point on the scale, how would that make you feel? Now I have fire alarms and air raid sirens going off in my head. In 1 2-hour session, I'll easily knock levels of distress down from 7, 8, 9 or 10 to 0 many times over. And he's hoping to knock off 1 point once in an entire session? This is horrendous, even for a beginner. Then he gets out his MP3 player thing and says, now I'm going to play a recording. Which one, I ask? The one you already sent me? Yes, he says. And I say, no, you're not going to play that for me. I've heard it already. A week goes by. Second session has to be better. He starts to read me his stress and the brain script again. I say, no. He says he's supposed to repeat the reading of the brain script every week, not just as practice, but even when he's fully qualified. He asks me how wonderful I'll feel if I wake up tomorrow and I'm a 10th happier. I say, no. Your hypno school is a sham, and this fellow who founded it is either incompetent or a charlatan. Ask for your money back. No, he says, wait for week 3, and I say, no. So he sends me a spiel-y video about how wonderful this particular brand of hypnotherapy is from a top qualified practitioner who presumably has loads of clients paying her good money for absolute crap. In the video, she says, clients sign up for 8 to 12 weeks. Session 7 is a whole day intensive. Clients often say on week 8, I really don't know if this is working, but I say, don't worry, come back for another 4 sessions. Seriously, her promo video was that bad, and people are falling for it. I said to my friend, no, watch my YouTube videos, begin to comprehend how powerful NLP really is, get your money back, and you can come to my school and train with me when I have it all set up. I would honestly hazard a guess that perhaps even the majority of people with an NLP certificate hanging on their wall really can't do much, if anything, with it. So be careful. Really ask questions and do your research before you sign up for a course of therapy sessions or a practitioner training program. So there are some NLP hypnotherapy schools which you need to give a very wide berth, this one in particular, and be wary of other scams, including most of mainstream mental health service therapy. I am very much looking forward to the day that mind-altering substances offered to us by nature, such as ayahuasca and psilocybin and kambo, are legalized in Western countries. Man-made substances which show great promise according to the research are MDMA, also known as methamphetamine or ecstasy, and ketamine, an extremely safe drug mostly used as an anesthetic. Bear in mind that these substances are still illegal in many countries and that they are extremely powerful. Knowledgeable guidance and a carefully managed set and setting are essential. A powerful, well-designed sports car may handle very well and be very safe to drive at speed on the highway, but if you've never driven a car before, you don't want to be speeding along the highway in heavy traffic in said sports car by yourself with no instructor. In carefully designed and curated set and settings, some of these substances have already been proven to have profound benefits to those who have suffered trauma, unlike alcohol and cigarettes, which nevertheless should also remain legal. It is not the job of government to forcibly choose for me what substances I do or do not put in my body. In the meantime, my plan is to hold trauma healing retreats in nature with trees and animals and birds and bees and flowers and vegetables integrated into the healing process. And until such time as we have fully formed our own parallel societies and get to do only what is good for our various nationalities and peoples, there is a plethora of profoundly helpful techniques for trauma recovery, some of which facilitate the same extreme brain plasticity that these substances do. Just over a decade ago, I began a concerted quest to find ways to achieve holistic health for myself, mostly in the realm of mental and emotional health and trauma healing, but also in the physical. One of the first trauma therapies I came across was eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or EMDR, which was created by Francine Shapiro. I didn't dwell there and have never tried or used the technique. I'm convinced that the techniques that I use now are far, far quicker and more efficacious than EMDR, and I really want to have decent independent research done to prove this. On my healing retreats, I'd like to experiment with some sort of woodland walking therapy. This is just a crazy idea of mine. And involve natural eye movements, for example, by encouraging bird spotting as a very gentle potential way to use EMDR-style eye movements and the theorized dual attention aspect of EMDR, as well as a head-up positive posture to effect change in how traumatic memories are stored. On the whole, EMDR seems a bit too slow for my liking, but I have long wanted to incorporate it into my own nature-based therapy as it seems very promising. I'm very keen to use nature-based therapy with traumatized war veterans especially, but also with other neglected vulnerable groups such as troubled youth, grooming gang and child trafficking rape victims, other abuse victims, and people struggling with addictions. The great and famous hypnotist Paul McKenna is a vocal advocate of havening and seems to teach at least aspects of it. This is a technique created by Ronald Rudin. I don't think any specific parts of it have yet made it into my toolbox, but I am impressed by it. There are similarities to the techniques that I practice, and it seems to yield similar results to mine. I find the use of touch and body movement to be practically essential to trauma healing, and I doubt that I've ever done more than 1 or 2 sessions which didn't involve physical touch or movement. The safe, reassuring, mother-like touch used in havening makes perfect sense to me. Internal Family Systems, or IFS, is a modality created by Richard Schwartz and seems very reminiscent of parts integration or negotiation in NLP. I was pretty certain I had read an NLP book on parts therapy, I think by Bandler and or Grinda years ago, but I can't find it anywhere now. I'm only slightly familiar with Richard Schwartz's work, but I find lots of good stuff in it. I think that the essentials of IFS are probably baked into Robert Smith's Faster EFT that I practice. Robert has dealing with pieces and parts as an absolute fundamental of Faster EFT. I think that this and some tangential techniques of Robert Smith's probably cover all the very true bases of IFS, but in more fluid, less verbose and structured ways. Another great transformational teacher is Bruce Lipton, and he is a big promoter of Psych K. Again, I'm not at all familiar with the inner workings of the technique, so I have Psych K creator Rob Williams' book lined up on my reading list so I can learn more about it. Psych K practitioners and trainers are very secretive about the details of the technique, but I know that they utilize kinesiology style muscle testing, and though I never say never, I don't suppose I will ever need or want to use muscle testing. So I don't think I'll be forking out for a Psych K course anytime soon. There is a family of acupressure tapping techniques which use various points representing internal organs on the traditional Chinese acupuncture meridian map of the human body. The grandfather technique is Roger Callahan's thought field therapy, or TFT, which gave rise to Gary Craig's simpler emotional freedom technique, or EFT, and from this Robert Gene Smith created faster EFT, also known as eutaptics. When I was propelled by a serious physical illness to finally begin a quest to heal my own decades-long trauma, having discovered Chinese Qigong and EMDR, I was still searching and came across Robert Smith and faster EFT, and I was immediately excited, like I'd found something truly spectacular. Perhaps at the time, if I'd discovered Ronald Rudin and Havening, I would be raving about Rudin now, but Robert at the time had nearly 1,000 videos online, and I devoured them, and my healing was accelerated exponentially. I would guess that Gary Craig's emotional freedom technique might be on a par with EMDR, effective but not the best of the best, and I would not choose to work with either, but Robert took EFT, refined it, and added his own philosophy and aspects of several other effective healing modalities, along with a large dollop of NLP. Robert's philosophy with faster EFT is significantly different than that of EFT, and faster EFT is hypnosis-based more than anything else. Robert is a healing genius, a modality magpie who has created a scintillating, gem-studded, super potent trauma healing method. I have many other teachers, but most significant of these has to be David Snyder. He, like Robert, is a magpie and a genius, and he combines Chinese medicine and NLP and a bunch of other stuff. He's a licensed acupuncturist, a neurolinguistic programming master practitioner and trainer, and has a string of martial arts black belts and other Chinese medicine, hypnosis, and energy healing certifications. He doesn't use acupressure tapping for trauma healing, but his techniques dovetail beautifully with Robert Smith's faster EFT ones. If you're interested in hypnosis, there's a bunch more excellent potential teachers that you can choose from, but I particularly like Milton Erickson, Stephen Parkhill, Mark Cunningham, and NLP co-creator Richard Bandler, to name a few that come to mind. Most of the techniques I practice have a somatic element. I think it is essential, as do almost all of the trauma therapists I most respect and admire. I'm pretty sure David Snyder has said something like, "The mind is the body is the mind. Trauma gets trapped in the body-mind." As the title of Bessel van der Kolk's aptly named book tells us, the body keeps the score. I'm relatively new to Peter Levine's somatic experiencing and to Irene Lyon, who does a lot to promote and teach Peter's and others' very body-centered therapies. I have one friend who has found somatic experiencing to be much more helpful to her than faster EFT was, so as I said before, there really isn't a one-size-fits-all trauma healing modality. Here again, I want to use Irene Lyon as a kind of foil and give my perspective on her work, which I'm only passingly familiar with, so please correct me if I make any horrible misjudgments. I especially want to address the healing of extreme trauma in relation to this. I will probably refer quite frequently to the Serenity Prayer in future videos, where you are seeking to accept the things you can't change, to change the things you can, and to have the wisdom to know the difference. That third line, the wisdom to know the difference between changeable and unchangeable, is so important. You can probably tell by now that I do not like talk therapies very much. If you want to get consistent, fast results, you have to engage the subconscious mind and you have to get the physical body involved. When I was working with this most extreme trauma case throughout 2023, dealing with memories of things that no human, let alone a small child, should ever be forced to witness or experience, I had to be extremely creative, and some of Irene Lyon's ideas, maybe actually her mentors, Peter Levine's or Kathy Kane's originally, were very, very useful. In order to get a handle on the horror and severity of the spontaneous flashbacks that she would go into, I often had to get her entire body involved in various ways to give her back her agency, which had been so effectively and brutally taken away from her. Her abilities to fight or flee and to shake off the trauma, having survived near-death experiences again and again and again. And it worked. We made very significant progress. If someone has experienced trauma and it is still stuck in the mind-body, then the trauma is not a memory in the past. When you revisit it by thinking or talking about it, then you relive it. You recreate in the now the physiological state of that past event. So just having to try to talk about it to a therapist can be extremely traumatic, even extremely re-traumatizing, and it's often completely counterproductive and harmful rather than helpful. So when Irene Lyon talks about Peter Levine's principles of pendulation and of titration, like the careful drop, drop, drop in chemistry till the point that the test solution is neutralized, she is right. She's giving you the wisdom to know that you can change. You can release and heal your trauma and not remain stuck in it forever. But you don't want to overwhelm the system, which talk therapy is prone to doing. But I think she misses the wisdom to know the difference between resigning yourself to the idea that this process might have to take many months or even years, and understanding that for most people, if you use the extreme brain plasticity brought about by hypnosis or psychedelic substances, then this gentle titration process can be carried out very, very quickly and can be used to resolve even extreme trauma in minutes or hours even, rather than weeks or months or years. I want to illustrate this with an example of a faster EFT session of my teacher Robert Smith's with a woman called Michelle. This is from way back in 2002 when faster EFT was in its infancy, though still very powerful, and when it much more closely resembled emotional freedom technique, EFT. When she was about 7, Michelle witnessed her little 5-year-old sister being murdered, and her repressed memories of the event started to resurface when she was in her 30s. She was referred to a psychiatrist and could barely get the story out. They put her on meds, she was doped up, she was unable to tell the story. If she tried, she was immediately 7 again and would just break down. It was re-traumatizing. If you watch the session in which Robert works with Michelle on the memory of this event, you'll see how he uses a form of titration to gently neutralize the memory of the murder and of pendulation, allowing her to expand, to gently decompress, all in only about 10 minutes, not weeks or months or years. And you'll be able to observe the very subtle but essential parts work at play. We don't name or categorize parts in faster EFT like they do in IFS, though there are techniques that we use in which they might have something to say. The tapping in faster EFT at times becomes much more like havening touch, though I'm inclined to think that I might pull in more actual havening techniques in the future. The field of trauma therapy is vast and a very mixed bag. I've only scratched the surface here, but I hope that this will give you food for thought and become a platform from which to launch a more in-depth discussion. I'm here to learn as well as teach. Thanks for watching. Keep watching a minute or two more for bonuses. Note that this video is only part of the much broader Mind, Body, Soul mini course, which you can sign up for free, just in case you got here some other way. Also, if you haven't already watched it, note that the New Life Heal Up and Thrive Masterclass is available for free, and it has lots more information on mental health treatment, emotional trauma therapy, and other holistic health and well-being topics. Information on all these can be found on the New Life Heal Up and Thrive Facebook group, where you'll get notifications of more free stuff, live events, plus coaching and other services and products. And you can get involved in the community, discuss these topics, get answers to questions, and get and offer support to others. Also note that everyone here gets a free half-hour consult with me. You can book that through the newlife.com website, and there'll be a link in the notes. Finally, there's a free downloadable ebook to accompany this session. The link will also be in the notes for this video, so grab your copy now. I'll see you in the next session. Bye.